The night inside the alien mansion was quiet, too quiet, like the whole building was holding its breath. The human worker, Daniel, had finished his duties hours ago, yet sleep did not come easily. The long halls of this place always made him uneasy. As if shadows were watching from corners, he sat on his bed, half awake, half lost in thought, listening to the faint hum of the energy crystals that lit the corridors outside. Suddenly a sound broke the silence. It was soft at first, like the brushing of fabric against metal. Footsteps light, hesitant, moving closer and closer. His heart jumped. At this hour, no one should be here. The guards usually stayed near the gates, and the other workers were locked in their quarters. Only one kind of person moved so silently: the alien maids. The door creaked. Daniel turned his head quickly. His room door had not been fully locked, and now it slowly pushed open. A slim figure appeared, her silhouette framed by the pale glow of the hallway light. It was the maid, a young alien girl with silver blue eyes that seemed to glow even in the dimness. She stepped inside, her steps uncertain, her hand still holding the door as if she had not meant to enter. He froze. For a moment, neither spoke. The air was heavy. Her eyes widened and she let out a sharp breath. She had not expected to see him like this. Daniel had taken off his outer uniform, wearing only a thin undershirt and simple trousers. To humans, it was nothing strange, but to her people, who always covered themselves in layers of robes and veils, this sight was shocking. She whispered something in her language, words he did not understand, but the way her voice shook told him everything. Her gaze did not move away. It was as if she had stumbled into a forbidden vision. He quickly grabbed a cloth from his bed and held it across his chest, feeling heat rush into his face. "You shouldn't be here," he said softly, his voice breaking the silence. The maid blinked, as though waking from a dream. Her hand trembled on the door. I thought this was the supply room," she whispered, her words broken but clear enough in human tongue. Her cheeks glowed faintly, a strange shimmer that looked almost like blushing. She should have run away, turned back into the corridor and pretended nothing happened, but she did not move. Daniel felt a chill crawl down his spine. He remembered the rules. Humans were not allowed to be alone with alien servants after nightfall. If the guards saw her here, it would not matter if it was accident or mistake. He would be punished, perhaps even expelled from the colony. And yet she didn't leave. Instead, she stepped one pace closer, the door now half closed behind her, her silver blue eyes locked on his, wide, filled with something between fear and curiosity. She whispered again, "Different. Humans are different." Her voice carried a strange wonder, as though she was seeing a secret truth. Daniel's throat went dry. What did she mean by different? Why did she look at him not with anger, not with shame, but with fascination? He glanced at the open door, shadows shifting in the corridor. If someone passed by, they would both be finished. He moved quickly, pulling the door shut with a quiet click. The room fell into deeper silence. His heart pounded in his chest. The maid gasped softly, surprised that he had locked them in together. Now they stood facing one another, breath shallow, fear and tension swirling in the air. Her hands clutched the hem of her robe, her voice trembling. I should not be here," she said again, but her feet did not move. The way she looked at him told another story. She was caught between duty and something else, something dangerous. Daniel took one step back, trying to keep distance, but he could feel her presence filling the room. He had never been this close to one of them, not without the weight of rules pressing on both. Tonight, by accident or fate, a line had been crossed. And as he watched her silver blue eyes shine in the dim light, one thought kept echoing in his mind. This night will not end the same way it began. The room was silent, but the tension was sharp. The maid stood frozen near the door, her wide silver blue eyes locked on him. Her chest rose and fell quickly, like she had just run a long distance. Daniel tried to steady his breathing, but he could feel the weight of her gaze. It wasn't the look of someone who wanted to run away. It was the look of someone who had just discovered a secret. She whispered something again in her alien tongue. The word soft and melodic. Daniel shook his head slowly. "I don't understand," he murmured. But her eyes didn't move. Her stare was fixed, filled with shock, curiosity, and something else he could not name. The glow of the energy crystals outside filtered through the door's thin gap, lighting half of her face. Her expression was trembling between fear and fascination. Daniel covered himself more, trying to break her focus, but it was no use. She stepped forward as though her feet moved without her command. "You," she said carefully in broken human words. "Different." Her voice cracked on the word, her eyes widened even more. Shimmering as though reflecting a hidden light, Daniel felt heat rise in his face. He wanted to push her out, tell her to leave. But something about her trembling hands stopped him. She wasn't mocking him, she wasn't judging him, she was amazed. The silence stretched. His heart pounded in his ears. He glanced toward the corridor, afraid of footsteps, afraid of discovery, but she didn't notice. Her focus was only on him. "You are not like us," she whispered again, as though, repeating to herself, her words sounded like a confession. Daniel swallowed hard. "You shouldn't be here," he reminded her, but his voice lacked strength. She shook her head. "I didn't mean, I saw. I couldn't look away." Her wide eyes blinked as if she was trying to wake up from a dream. Her hands pressed against her chest. She was shaking, not from fear, but from something deeper. He had heard rumors about her kind. They lived under strict customs, bodies always hidden, touch forbidden, curiosity punished. To her people, what she saw now was more than improper. It was forbidden knowledge. Daniel suddenly understood. She wasn't shocked because she thought he had broken rules. She was shocked because for the first time in her life, she was seeing something real, something different. The air grew heavier. Daniel's throat tightened. He whispered, "If the guards find you here, it will be bad for both of us." But instead of running, she took another step closer. Her glowing eyes reflected the dim light. They looked like twin moons in the dark. "Why, hide?" she asked softly. Her voice trembled. Her gaze dropped for a second, then quickly rose again. She was searching his face, his body, his humanity. Daniel backed up against the bed. His legs felt weak. He had faced danger before, but never like this. This wasn't a fight, this wasn't a threat, this was something he didn't know how to name. He realized his hands were shaking, not with fear, but with the strange energy between them. She seemed to feel it too. Her lips parted slightly as if to say more, but she stopped herself. Instead, her wide eyes held him there like chains, invisible yet unbreakable. A soft sound echoed in the corridor. Daniel's head snapped to the door. His heart stopped, but the maid didn't move. She didn't even blink. She was trapped in the sight of him. He whispered urgently, "Go, before someone comes." But she only shook her head once, firmly. Her wide eyes shimmered with stubborn light. For the first time, Daniel realized she wasn't only shocked, she was choosing to stay. And in that moment he felt the night shift again, turning more dangerous, more fragile, and more impossible to escape. Daniel's chest was heavy with unease. The alien maid's wide silver eyes still locked on him, refusing to leave. The silence stretched, filled with unspoken words. He wanted to push her out, to end this danger. But something deeper kept him, frozen. It wasn't only her mistake. It was the way she stayed, as though bound to him by an invisible thread. He remembered the rules of the colony. Every human was told the same warning on their first day: never be alone with a servant after nightfall. The aliens had strict laws, and humans who crossed them were punished quickly. Rumors spoke of workers taken away in the night, never to be seen again. Daniel had always kept those rules like iron chains, but tonight those chains felt weak. The maid finally broke the silence. Her voice was soft, almost too soft to hear. "If anyone sees, we will be punished." She was trembling, her hands clutching her robe, but she didn't move toward the door. Her eyes still studied him with that dangerous mix of fear and wonder. Daniel swallowed. "Then you must go now," he whispered. Urgency rising in his voice, he tried to sound firm, but his tone cracked under the weight of the moment. She shook her head slowly, her silver hair falling across her face. "I cannot," she said simply. His breath caught. "Why?" She hesitated as though the words were a crime, then whispered, "Because I wanted to see." The confession hung in the air, sharp as a blade. Daniel's stomach twisted. She hadn't entered by mistake, not completely. Some part of her had chosen this. Some part of her had wanted to see what humans kept hidden. The danger now was unbearable. Daniel glanced toward the door, imagining a guard's shadow falling across it, imagining chains, punishment, exile. But when he looked back at her eyes, he saw no malice, no trick, only honesty, fragile and trembling. "You should not say that," he muttered, stepping closer. His whisper sounded harsh even to his own ears, but she only lowered her head. Her voice cracked. "I live only by rules. Every day, every step I am told where to walk, what to wear, when to speak, but tonight I saw something true." Daniel's heart pounded harder. He knew this was forbidden. He knew the unspoken rule was not only about distance, it was about control. Humans and servants were never meant to share secrets, never meant to see one another as equals. Yet here they stood, sharing a secret that could end them both. The maid's fingers curled at her side. She looked at him again, this time, with tears shining faintly in her wide eyes. "I should not be here, but I cannot lie," she whispered. "I will not tell them." Her words cut through the silence, a promise he didn't know if he could trust, but one that struck deep. Daniel exhaled slowly. His whole life here was built on staying hidden, staying small, surviving under rules he never made. But this alien girl had just broken the first and strongest rule and dragged him into it with her. A sudden sound outside made them both flinch. Boots against the metal floor, a guard walking nearby. Their eyes met in panic. Daniel acted without thinking. He reached out and pulled her closer, pressing her against the wall beside the bed. His hand covered her mouth. Her body stiffened. Her wide eyes grew even larger as she realized what he had done. The footsteps stopped right outside his door. Silence. Daniel's heartbeat thundered in his ears. He held his breath. The maid's eyes filled with terror. For a long moment they stood like statues. Then the guard moved on. The sound of boots. Fading into the distance, Daniel slowly pulled his hand away. The maid gasped softly, clutching her chest. Her eyes shone with tears and fear, but also with something else. Trust. He had chosen to protect her, even though she was the one who had put him in danger. The unspoken rule was clear. Humans and servants could never stand together, never protect one another. But tonight, Daniel had broken it, and in the maid's trembling eyes he saw the truth. She didn't regret it. The room still felt heavy after the guard's footsteps faded away. Daniel and the maid stood close, too close, breaths shallow, hearts beating like drums in the silence. He slowly stepped back, creating a little space. But the distance felt thin, fragile, as if it could vanish with one step. The maid's silver blue eyes lifted to his. Her lips trembled. "You protected me," she whispered. Her voice was shaky, but behind it there was a soft warmth. Daniel shook his head. "I had no choice," he answered quickly. Though deep inside he knew it wasn't true. He could have pushed her out, could have let her face the guard alone, but instead he had chosen to shield her. She lowered her head, clutching her robe. "If they knew I was here, I would be taken away," she said quietly. Her voice broke. Daniel frowned. He had heard rumors of what happened to servants who broke the rules. Some were punished, some vanished. He didn't want to imagine her facing that fate. Silence stretched again, but this silence was different from before. It wasn't filled only with fear. It carried something else. Something Daniel couldn't name. The maid's steps were small, but she moved closer without realizing. Her robe brushed against his arm. Her glowing eyes lifted again, so near he could see the faint shimmer of tears still clinging to them. He swallowed hard. "You should leave," he whispered. "It's safer." But she shook her head slowly, firmly. "Not yet," she said. Daniel's chest tightened. Her answer felt dangerous, but also strangely honest. Her eyes wandered over him again, curious, studying. "Why are you uncovered?" she asked softly. Her tone was not mocking, not cruel, only innocent curiosity. Daniel hesitated. His face warmed. He pulled the cloth tighter across himself. "Because humans don't always hide," he said. His words were simple, but her eyes widened as though she had just heard something forbidden. She whispered in her language words he couldn't follow, then asked, "Do all humans look like you?" Her cheeks glowed faintly. Daniel almost laughed nervously, but the question carried a weight that silenced him. He realized how sheltered she must be, how chained by rules that denied her the chance to even see something natural. The distance between them shrank again. Her hand lifted slightly, trembling in the air, as though she wanted to touch but couldn't. Daniel's breath caught. If she reached out, if she crossed that final line, there would be no return. His heart pounded, torn between stepping back or letting it happen. "You shouldn't," he whispered, his voice shaking. She froze, her hand hovering just inches from him. Her wide eyes met his, searching, testing. He could see the battle inside her, duty pulling her one way, desire pulling her another. A sharp noise outside made them both jump, but this time it was only the creak of pipes. They exhaled together, the tension between them growing heavier. The maid lowered her hand, but her voice was firm. "You are different," she said again. Daniel's throat tightened. "And that scares you?" he asked. She shook her head, slowly, her eyes glowing like stars. "No, it makes me feel alive." Daniel's breath caught at her words. A servant, bound by endless rules, had just confessed something dangerous. And she had confessed it to him, a human. The distance between them was gone now, not in steps but in truth. They were no longer strangers sharing a room by mistake. They were two souls standing at the edge of something forbidden, and as the night deepened around them, Daniel knew one thing clearly. This close distance was far more dangerous than any guard's footsteps. The silence between them grew heavier. The maid's silver blue eyes still glowed in the dim light, and Daniel could feel the weight of her presence pressing close. She had already stepped past so many rules just by standing here, and yet she didn't leave. Her lips parted as though she was holding back words. Then she spoke, voice trembling but clear. "Do all humans look like you?" Daniel froze. The question cut through the air like a blade. His mind stumbled for an answer, his face grew hot. He never imagined an alien maid would ask him something so direct, so forbidden. He gripped the cloth tighter around himself, searching. Her wide eyes. She didn't flinch. She didn't look ashamed. She only waited, her breathing shallow, her expression trembling between innocence and desire for truth. Daniel swallowed hard. "Yes," he whispered. "Most of us look like this." His words were soft, careful, but her reaction was not what he expected. Her eyes widened even more, shimmering with curiosity. Her cheeks glowed faintly, and she took another step closer. "We are never allowed," she whispered. "Never allowed to see, never allowed to ask." Her hands clutched her robe tightly as though holding back from tearing the rule book written. Into her bones, Daniel's chest tightened. He realized then how much courage it took for her to ask him this. She was not teasing, not mocking. She was risking herself just by letting those words leave her lips. "Why do you want to know?" he asked carefully. She lowered her head, her silver hair falling forward. Her voice cracked. "Because I feel different when I look at you." The confession was soft, almost broken, but it lit fire in the silence. Daniel's heart raced. Her words echoed inside him, louder than any warning of punishment, louder than the rules he had lived under since coming here. She dared to lift her eyes again, trembling. Is it wrong that I want to see more? The forbidden question hung in the air, heavy and dangerous. Daniel's throat was dry. He should have told her yes, that it was wrong. He should have sent her away and closed the door forever. But the look in her eyes stopped him. The glow of them was not hunger, not cruelty, but longing, pure and desperate. He whispered, "If anyone finds out, they will punish you." His voice shook, but she only shook her head. "I don't care," she said softly. Her lips quivered. "I only care about this moment." The words struck deep. Daniel felt a shiver run through him. No one had ever looked at him like that in this colony. No one had spoken to him with such honesty. It was as though she had broken the chains that bound her, even if only for one night. Their silence stretched. Filled with danger, her trembling hands lifted slightly again, hovering near him. Daniel's heart pounded. If she touched him, if she crossed that line, nothing could be undone. He whispered urgently, "Stop. You don't understand." But she did not lower her hand. Her wide eyes begged for an answer he could not give. The tension was unbearable. His breath shook. The forbidden question still burned in the air. Did she want only knowledge, or was it something more? Before either could speak again, a sudden creak echoed outside, the sound of movement in the corridor. Both of them froze. The danger of discovery snapped back like a whip. The maid's hand dropped quickly, her breath catching in her throat. Daniel's heart slammed against his ribs. They stared at each other, fear mixing with something else, something stronger. And in her wide, shimmering eyes, Daniel saw the truth. Her forbidden question had already been answered, not in words, but in the way she looked at him. The maid's trembling hand had just dropped when the sound came again. Heavy footsteps echoed in the corridor, slow and deliberate. The air inside Daniel's room turned cold. The maid's eyes widened in terror, her body froze. Daniel's instincts sharpened. He grabbed her wrist and pulled her toward the corner beside his bed, pressing her against the shadowed wall. His own back pressed close to hers. He raised a finger to his lips, urging silence. She nodded quickly, her breath sharp and fast. The footsteps grew louder, closer. The guard was making his rounds. Every night they checked the halls, but rarely. This late tonight was different tonight. Danger had chosen this very door. The maid's small frame shook against him. Daniel could feel her fear as if it were his own. He leaned close, whispering barely above a breath, "Do not move." She pressed her lips together, holding back a sound. The shadow of the guard's boots passed under the thin crack of the door. Then, to Daniel's horror, the footsteps slowed. Stopped. Silence. Daniel's heart pounded, sweat forming at his temple. The maid's silver-blue eyes shone faintly in the dark, wide with panic. The doorknob rattled once. Daniel's whole body went tense. He wrapped his arm around her, holding her tightly in place. If the guard entered now, everything would be over. But after a long moment, the knob stilled. The guard muttered something in his deep alien tongue. Then the heavy steps moved away, fading slowly into the distance. Daniel didn't breathe. Until the sound was gone, the maid exhaled shakily, her knees almost giving out. Daniel steadied her with his hands. "It's over," he whispered. She leaned against him, her forehead nearly touching his chest. Her voice was barely a breath. "You saved me again." Daniel shook his head. "I just kept us both alive." But the truth was heavier. He knew why he had done it. He had acted without thinking, not to protect himself, but to protect her. She lifted her eyes to his, shining with unshed tears. "If they caught me here, I would be taken away," she said. Her voice cracked. Daniel frowned. "What would they do?" She swallowed, looking down. "Punish me, sell me, maybe worse." The weight of her words struck him hard. He had known their society was strict, but he hadn't realized how merciless it was for servants. His jaw tightened. "Then you must never risk this again," he said firmly, but his voice betrayed him with its softness. Her hands clutched his arm suddenly. "But you are the first to ever treat me like I matter," she whispered. Her confession made his chest ache. No one had ever said such words to him either. Not here. Not in this cold alien colony. The silence that followed was filled with more than fear. It was filled with the fragile bond growing between them, a bond that neither rules nor shadows could erase. Outside, the guard's shadow had passed, but inside, another shadow lingered. The shadow of choices not yet made, of questions not yet answered. Daniel looked at the maid, her wide silver eyes, glowing like fragile moons, and he realized this night had tied them together. She should have run. She should have left the moment danger passed. But she didn't. Instead, she whispered with trembling lips, "I don't want to leave." Daniel's breath caught. He knew her words were dangerous, more dangerous than the guard's shadow itself. But as he looked at her, standing so close, trembling yet unbroken, he also knew he didn't want her to leave either. And in that silent room with the memory of footsteps fading, they both understood. This was no longer just an accident. It was the beginning of something neither could control. The silence after the guard's passing was heavier than the sound of his boots. Daniel could still feel the echo of danger pressing against his chest. But when he looked down, he saw something else. The maid's wide silver eyes were no longer filled only with fear. They were filled with something deeper. Her hand still clutched his arm as if she was afraid he might let go. Her voice trembled when she finally spoke. "I should not be here," she whispered. "I know the rules. I know the punishment." She lowered her head, strands of silver hair falling across her face. "But I don't want to leave." Daniel's heart tightened. He had expected her to run the moment the danger was gone. Instead, she confessed the opposite. His throat felt dry. "Why?" he asked softly. His voice was almost afraid of the answer. She lifted her head slowly. Her glowing eyes shimmered, and in them he saw tears. "Because I feel safe here," she whispered. The words struck him harder than any threat. Her lips trembled as she went on. "I have lived under chains since I was a child. I am told when to walk, when to kneel, when to hide my face." She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. "But near you, I don't feel like a servant." Daniel's breath caught. He had heard many things since coming to this colony, but never had he heard an alien speak so openly, especially to a human. He wanted to say something, anything, but no words came. The truth in her voice left him silent. She shook her head quickly, wiping her tears. "I shouldn't say this," she whispered. "If they knew they would punish me, they would punish you too." Her voice broke again, and then she said the words that made his chest ache. "But I cannot lie to myself anymore." Daniel's mind raced. This was no longer just an accident, no longer just curiosity. This was a bond forming in the shadows of rules and chains. He should have pushed her away for both their sakes, but instead he found himself stepping closer. "You don't have to fear me," he said quietly, his voice steadier than he expected. "I will not hurt you." Her eyes widened, shimmering with hope. She whispered back, "That is why I come near, because you are human, because you are not like them." Her small hands shook as she clutched her robe tighter. "I hear your voice in the hall sometimes, and it makes me breathe easier." Daniel felt a weight settle in his chest. Her trembling confession was not just about tonight. It was about something longer, something she had carried silently. He realized she had been near before, always watching from the edge of shadows, always drawn to him, though she could never explain why. The silence between them now was different. It was fragile, dangerous, but alive. Daniel wanted to deny it, wanted to remind her of the rules, but her words had already cut through his defenses. He saw her not as a servant, not as an alien girl bound by chains, but as someone reaching out for freedom. Her voice trembled once, more softer than before. "If you tell me to go, I will go, but if you let me stay, I will never betray you." Daniel's chest ached with the weight of choice. The trembling confession had bound them together more tightly than the guard's shadow ever could, and as he looked into her shining silver eyes, he realized something dangerous. He didn't want her to go. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Daniel stood still, her trembling words echoing in his ears. "If you let me stay, I will never betray you." The promise sounded fragile, like glass that could shatter at the slightest touch. But it was also powerful. The clock crystal on the wall pulsed faintly, marking the late hour, midnight. This was the time when most of the colony slept, when rules weighed the heaviest and when breaking them was most dangerous. Daniel could feel the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He looked at her. This alien maid with silver blue eyes that shimmered in the dark. She was not supposed to be here, not supposed to look at him this way, not supposed to confess such things, yet she had. And now he stood at the edge of a choice. His voice was low, rough. "If anyone finds out, it will destroy us both." He expected her to shrink back, but instead, she lifted her chin, her eyes glowing brighter. "Then let them never find out," she whispered. Her voice shook, but her words were steady. Daniel's chest tightened. He should have ended it, should have told her to leave, but the way she looked at him, pleading yet fearless, made his heart stumble. "Why risk so much?" he asked, his tone harsher than he meant. She lowered, her gaze clutching her robe. "Because I am tired of living as nothing," she whispered. "With you, I feel seen." The words hit him like a strike. He had lived long in this colony, always treated as an outsider, always beneath the rules of others. And now, in her eyes, he saw a reflection of his own loneliness, his own quiet suffering. Silence, stretched, broken only by the faint hum of the walls. She stood near the door, her body tense, ready to obey if he ordered her away, ready to stay if he allowed it. The choice was his, and it felt heavier than any burden he had ever carried. Daniel stepped closer, his voice soft. "If I let you stay, you must understand there is no turning back." Her silver blue eyes lifted, shimmering. "I understand," she said firmly. The trembling in her hands betrayed her fear, but her voice carried truth. For a moment he hesitated, his mind torn between reason and something far stronger. Then, with a slow breath, he whispered, "Stay." Her eyes widened, shimmering with disbelief, then with something brighter. "Hope?" She moved closer, her steps slow and uncertain, as though she was afraid the moment might vanish. Daniel's chest rose and fell heavily. His choice had been made. She sat lightly on the edge of his bed, careful, trembling, but her presence filled the room more than any light. Daniel sat opposite, not too near, but close enough to feel her nearness. They said nothing at first, silence speaking louder than words. Finally, she whispered, "I thought I would feel shame, but instead I feel free." She pressed her hands together tightly. "Even if it lasts only one night, it is enough." Daniel's throat tightened. He wanted to believe her, wanted to think this fragile connection could survive. But danger loomed like a shadow. Still, he couldn't take back his choice. She was here, and she was his responsibility now. The midnight silence wrapped around them, heavy yet strangely peaceful. They both knew the world outside would never accept this moment. But inside this room, for now, it was theirs. And as Daniel looked into her trembling but determined eyes, he realized his choice at midnight was not just to let her stay. It was to let himself feel alive again, even if it meant breaking every rule. The room was still, but the silence between them was alive. Daniel sat on one side of the bed, the maid on the other. Her silver blue eyes darted nervously, but she did not run. She had chosen to stay, and he had chosen to let her, for a long moment. Neither spoke. Only the faint hum of the energy crystal on the wall filled the air. Daniel's chest rose and fell heavily. His mind replayed every warning he had ever been told. Never be alone with them after nightfall. Yet here he was, breaking that unspoken law. She lifted her head, her eyes shining faintly in the dim light. "Do you hate me for staying?" she whispered. Daniel blinked, surprised by the question. He shook his head slowly. "No." His voice was soft, honest. "I don't hate you." Her hands tightened around her robe. She leaned forward slightly, her voice trembling. "Then, why do you look at me with such pain in your eyes?" Daniel's breath caught. He hadn't realized she could see so deeply. "Because I know what this means," he whispered. "I know what it will cost if they find out." Her wide eyes filled with something fragile. "And still, you did not push me away." The truth settled heavily between them. He had every chance to send her out the door, every reason to protect himself. Yet something inside him had stopped him. Something stronger than fear, stronger than rules. "You remind me of myself," he confessed quietly. Her gaze lifted sharply. Confused, Daniel leaned back, his voice low. "I came here with hope once, but they buried it under rules, under silence. I lived small so they would not notice me, so they would not break me." He looked at her trembling hands. "And now, I see you, and I know you are the same." Her lips parted, but no sound came. Tears shimmered in her silver eyes. "You see me," she whispered, the words breaking like fragile glass. "No one has ever said that." Daniel's chest ached. He hadn't meant to speak so openly, but the truth had escaped him. He realized this was the unseen bond forming quietly between them. Not built on words alone, but on loneliness shared. Her voice was small, like a child's. "When you pulled me close to hide me, I felt safe for the first time." She hesitated, then added, "Not because you are strong, but because you cared." The silence thickened. Daniel's breath slowed. He stared at her, realizing this fragile maid was no longer just a servant in his eyes. She was someone who had broken through his guarded world, just as he had stepped. Into hers, their bond was invisible, but it pressed around them like air, binding them in ways they couldn't explain. He reached out slightly, not touching but resting his hand on the bed near hers. Her eyes widened, then softened. Slowly, with trembling fingers, she placed her hand beside his, not quite touching, but close enough that he felt the warmth. They sat like that, side by side, connected by something no guard, no rule, no chain could erase. Outside, the mansion slept under its strict silence. Unaware of the rebellion growing in this small room, Daniel knew danger would come. He knew the world beyond these walls would never forgive this. But as he looked into her glowing eyes, he realized something had already changed. They no longer needed words. The unseen bond had already been formed, stronger than the rules that tried to keep them apart. And in the quiet midnight, Daniel knew, whatever came next, they would face it together. The silence in the room felt fragile, like glass that could shatter at the lightest sound. Daniel and the maid sat side by side, their hands close but not touching, bound by an unseen bond that grew heavier with every breath. He thought the danger had passed, but he was wrong. A sudden knock rattled the door, sharp and unexpected. Daniel froze. The maid's eyes widened in terror, her body tensed like a bird, trapped in a cage. The knock came again, louder this time, followed by a voice. "Are you awake? I heard something." It was another maid calling through the door. Daniel's pulse quickened, his mind raced. If she opened the door now, everything would be over. He looked at the alien girl beside him. Her silver blue eyes shimmered with panic. She whispered, "They cannot see me here." Daniel moved quickly, grabbing her wrist. He pulled her closer to the shadowed side of the bed, pressing her against the wall. The knocking grew more impatient. "Answer me," the voice demanded. Daniel's throat was dry, he called back, forcing calm into his tone. "I'm fine. I just dropped something." Silence followed. His heart pounded so hard he thought it might give him away. The maid clutched his arm tightly, her breath hot against his shoulder. Finally, the voice outside softened. "Very well, I will leave you." The footsteps echoed away into the corridor, fading slowly. The maid sagged against him, her knees weak. Daniel held her steady, his own chest rose and fell heavily. The moment had passed, but the fear remained. The breaking point was here. They could not survive another close call. She looked up at him, her eyes filled with both relief and despair. "They will not stop," she whispered. "They always watch, they always listen." Her voice broke. "It is only a matter of time before we are caught." Daniel's jaw tightened. He hated the truth in her words. He had tried to believe they could hide, but tonight had shown him the reality. Every shadow, every knock, every guard step was a threat, waiting to break them apart. Her trembling hand touched his sleeve. "If they take me," she whispered, "I will say nothing, I will protect you." Tears glimmered in her silver eyes, but they will know, they always know. Daniel's chest ached. He grabbed her hand, surprising even himself. "No," he said firmly, "I will not let them take you." The words slipped out before he could stop them, but once spoken, he couldn't take them back. Her breath caught, her eyes widened, shimmering with something brighter than fear. "You would risk everything," she whispered. Daniel looked into her glowing eyes. "You are not just a servant to me anymore," he said. His voice was steady. The truth laid bare. "I cannot pretend you are nothing, not after tonight." Her lips trembled, and then she whispered the words that changed everything. "Then we are bound, no matter the cost." The silence after her confession was heavy. Daniel knew they had crossed the final line. There was no turning back now. The rules, the punishments, the fear, all of it still waited outside the door, but inside something stronger bound them together. The breaking point had come, not in anger, not in betrayal, but in truth. The truth of a bond that no guard's shadow, no knock at midnight could erase. And as Daniel held her trembling hand, he realized that tonight was no longer just about survival. It was about choosing, about standing against the chains of silence, even if it meant losing everything else. The room was still, yet it no longer felt the same. The danger outside had passed, but inside something had shifted forever. Daniel still held her trembling hand, and she did not pull away. Her silver blue eyes glowed faintly in the dim light, no longer wide with fear alone, but filled with something new. The weight of the night pressed around them. Daniel could hear the faint hum of the walls, the distant echoes of guards walking far down the corridor. But none of it felt as important as the girl sitting before him. This maid who should have been nothing more than a servant had spoken words that could destroy them both. "Then we are bound, no matter the cost." Daniel's chest rose and fell heavily. He wanted to believe this moment was only a dream, something fragile that would vanish with morning light. But the warmth of her hand in his was real. The shimmer of tears on her cheeks was real, and the bond that had formed between them could not be undone. She whispered softly, her voice breaking the silence. "Tonight I saw truth." Her words trembled, but her eyes did not waver. "And now I cannot forget." Daniel swallowed hard. His throat was tight. "Neither can I," he admitted. The honesty surprised even himself. He had lived in this colony for months, obeying rules, hiding pieces of himself. But one accident, one mistake, had shown him more than all those days of silence. Her lips curved into the faintest smile, a fragile thing. "You are not like them," she said gently. "You look at me, and I feel alive." Her voice cracked. "No one has ever made me feel that way." The words struck him deep. Daniel had thought himself strong enough to keep distance, strong enough to guard against danger. But now he realized strength was not in distance, it was in truth. It was in choosing to protect what mattered, even against the world. Outside, the night stretched on, quiet but heavy. At any moment, another knock could come, another shadow could fall across his door. But Daniel no longer cared. He had made his choice at midnight, and now he would not turn back. The maid shifted closer, her trembling hand brushing against his. Her voice was soft. "Will you regret this tomorrow?" The question hung heavy, but Daniel shook his head slowly. "No," he whispered, "because tomorrow will not erase tonight." Her eyes filled with tears again, but this time they were not only tears of fear, they were tears of release, of freedom. For one night she had broken her chains. For one night she had chosen herself, and she had chosen him. Daniel leaned closer, his voice low, steady. "Whatever comes, we face it together." The words sealed the bond, stronger than the unspoken rules, stronger than the fear. She smiled faintly through her tears, her glowing eyes softening. "Together," she whispered back. The room held their secret, fragile yet unbreakable. The night that had begun with an accident, a door opening by mistake, had ended with a bond that no law could erase. 2 lives, human and alien, forever changed. And as the energy crystal dimmed into the final hours of night, Daniel knew the truth. The world outside would never accept this. The rules would hunt them, the shadows would follow, but none of it mattered, for in this small room, under the cover of silence, a forbidden bond had been born. The night had changed everything, and neither of them would ever be the same again.